It's not a race, but a marathon. Take a deep breath. Gather your team around you. Stay away from the internet. Don't go out there and try to self-diagnose and try to figure out what's going on. And realize that you as a patient have the absolute right to ask as many questions as you can ask.
Hi, this is Patrick.
And this is Laura.
And you're listening to This is Cancer.
Brought to you by Siteman Cancer Center at Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, national leaders in cancer. So today's episode, I think, is one that every single person who's been diagnosed with cancer will identify with, hands down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're talking about navigating the treatment plan. And anytime anyone has been diagnosed, the first thing you have to figure out is, what am I supposed to do, right?
Yeah, there's so much information that comes at you so quickly when you find out that you have cancer. You got to process it, and then also, eventually the rubber's got to hit the road, and you got to come up with a plan to start tackling this problem that you've been faced with. And it's not an easy task to do alone. It's a lot to digest. And today we're fortunately joined by two guests. Chuck, who is the chair of the PFAC group at Siteman Cancer Center. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And PFAC stands for?
Patient Family Advisory Council.
And Tate, you're also joining us, and you are the Patient Services at Siteman Cancer Center manager, correct?
Yes.
And so you guys work in tandem a lot because your goal is to help the patient navigate cancer treatment.
Yep.
I think you described
100%.
it at PFAC to me yesterday as it's like the patient's voice. Is that right?
Yeah.
How do you describe PFAC to somebody when you're first kind of...
At first, it was kind of hard. And a lot of people think that we would be advocates for an individual patient that's coming through, but that's really not what we do. We have a team of roughly about 25 people that are on the council, and our council is comprised of cancer survivors, cancer caregivers. We have clinicians, and we also have physicians on our team that are a part of the thought process. And when opportunities like this are presented to us, we really let everybody have a voice in terms of what's going on, because not one person has all the experience that they need to have that, but the perspective that other people bring to the table is exactly what we're trying to do and provide to the various elements of Siteman.
Now, Chuck, you mentioned that the council is made up of a variety of people, some cancer survivors. Mm-hmm. You yourself are a cancer survivor, is that correct?
That's correct.
You've been treated at Siteman for, is it prostate cancer, is that right?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in April of 21.
And a side note plug, you found the cancer because you were getting your yearly PSA test.
PSA test.
Gentlemen, if you're over the age of 50, every year, finding it early can save your life.
Or if
Get
you
your
have
PSA.
have a family history of prostate cancer. Yep.
So in addition to cancer survivors on the council, there's also a lot of caregivers on the council, I would imagine.
Yes.
And you have also been a caregiver for somebody with cancer.
I have.
Now, this was your son, your oldest?
It was my oldest son. His name is Chip, or Charles the Fourth. I'm a Charles.
Mm-hmm.
And Chip was a great kid, and he was very outgoing. He was technically very, very smart, and he moved to San Francisco with some of his tech buddies. And I got a phone call one Sunday night, my wife and I, and he goes, "Dad, I'm in the hospital." And I go, "Okay, what's going on?" And he said his friend found him passed out on the floor of his apartment. They rushed him to a hospital in Oakland, Berkeley area, and they took some x-rays, and they discovered that there was a tumor in his brain. And he was diagnosed with glioblastoma, GBM, and he moved from the hospital in Oakland over to UCSF, which is a huge cancer facility on the West Coast. And the following morning, I was on an airplane going to San Francisco, and my journey as a caregiver started at that time. My wife joined us a couple days after that to be there, but it was one that, as a parent, you're always concerned about your child, but it's also trying to navigate the health system when you really haven't been in the health system.
Yeah.
And the harder part was, it was a road game. I wasn't at home. I didn't know my way around San Francisco and how to get from point A to point B and where to lay my head down at night. We learned an awful lot there. We had a lot of support from his friends, which was really terrific. And the care that he received at UCF was fantastic. He was operated on out there, and he had a world-class surgeon out there who had ties to St. Louis, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And they were able to remove the tumor, and he was doing fairly well, but we knew that he had a hard road in front of him. And when you're diagnosed with glioblastoma, the life expectancy is not very long. And we were able to get him back to St. Louis, and he lived with us for the remainder of his life. But he had some hard travels through there.
Yeah.
And when we told the folks at UCSF that we lived in St. Louis, they said, "Oh, good.
Yeah.
You can take him to Siteman."
Yeah.
And we were thrilled about that. It was like, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
Because they knew the clinicians there. It was an easy handoff to do that. And when he got into town, it was a whirlwind, absolute whirlwind, because we had an appointment literally the day after that he landed in St. Louis.
Yeah.
We were down at Siteman, and it was a full day. And we met the medical oncologist, the radiation oncologist. He had to do MRIs and CTs. So we got down there that day roughly about noon, and we didn't get home until about 11 o'clock at night because of all the tests that were going on. And it was a frightening experience because it opened up his eyes quite a bit to the challenges that were going on. And because he was in the tech industry, one of the things that he did is he spent a lot of time on the internet. And we made a pact with him that he would not go on the internet to look at his diagnosis and the things that are going to go on.
Yeah.
And it proved to be really great for everybody.
Yeah.
Because he didn't look at it. He didn't see all the negative things that are out there about that. So his journey was amazing.
Yeah.
But hard. But very, very hard.
When did he first discover it?
It was in July of 2015.
Okay.
And it was one of those things that just, you can't plan that.
No.
But there has to be some sort of event to alter his lifestyle, and having him found on the floor of his apartment was that was the event.
Yeah, my goodness.
And for most people, no one gets to decide when no one is, okay, well, this will be my year for having a life-altering diagnosis. It's almost like your brain stops working the way it normally did because you've heard that word, and you're supposed to be thinking as clearly as possible after hearing one of the most scariest things you're probably ever going to hear.
Oh, absolutely.
So what is your piece of advice that you would give or validate to someone if they're listening to this because they just heard this news or from someone they love or going through it? You don't have to figure this all out this moment. Right?
Right.
You can't.
The one thing that I learned early in this is you can't do it by yourself. You have to have a team of people that are around you. And the team really is the primary caregiver. And in my son's case, it was my wife and myself. The secondary deal is because people have health insurance and disability insurance, is to make sure you understand how all those programs work, because there's going to be a financial strain on somebody. And we had to do his disability. He lived in California, and that's where his disability was. And luckily, I'm in the insurance industry, and I was able to navigate that thing. The third thing is really developing allies inside of the Siteman. And the allies inside of that, in addition to the doctors that are providing the services, are really the nurses, the technicians, and people that can help you navigate through all of that type of stuff.
And what is the thing that you've heard the most from patients after they've gone through this is the most difficult part of beginning that navigation of the journey? What do you hear from them a lot of times?
So not only are patients and family members, caregivers, dealing with so many emotions, and my piece to this is it's okay to feel the way you feel. Everybody's going to feel different. Not any single person is going to feel the same way. We can kind of empathize or sympathize, but we don't know what that person's going through. And so be kind to yourself. If you just got diagnosed, be kind to yourself. You don't need everything, though, all at once.
Right.
And so it's okay to get information, but it's also okay to not know everything right then, because each day is going to be different. You might feel different in a week or two or months. So how you are today doesn't mean this is how you're going to be in the future. So just be prepared and arm yourself with lots of resources, but it's okay not to know every single resource from minute one.
What about when a physician gives you the diagnosis, you get the results back, and they say, so I'm going to refer you to? What power do you have as a patient to say, okay, I can look at that referral and make that appointment? Or what can you tell people about that? Doesn't mean that's that's the surgeon or that's the oncologist that you have to go to. There might be constraints within your insurance, right? What would be something that you could advise them to do when they get that referral to help them feel a little bit more comfortable?
Do your research on the physician. Do your research on the type of treatments that they're going to ask you to go through. The one thing that we learned is doctors are brilliant. Doctors are also people. And sometimes they have good days, sometimes they have bad days. They all have different personalities, and it's really finding a physician that will work well with your personality. When I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, we called up one of the radiation oncologists that worked with our son and said, who do I go to? And they named off 2 doctors, and they were both brilliant guys. And this person said, you'll work better with Dr. Bauman because he is like you. He's very verbal. He's a nice guy. He gets it. And that was who I went to. And it worked out well because I was able to communicate with him and his team better than I would have with somebody else.
So you're saying if someone gets this, they get the results back, call people around you, ask who do you know that is in this, in the city, obviously, or in the area that you live in, and research that person. And you don't, everyone's constraints are different when it comes to insurance or whatever, but there is decision-making power on your end. You do have time to take research or say, I'll make that appointment and then make another appointment. You can get a second opinion, right?
Absolutely. When my son was diagnosed at UCSF, we were in a room and I met the doctor and he goes, okay, guys, you have 3 things that you can do. 1, we can wait and see what happens. 2, we can go in and take a biopsy of his brain and see what it does. Or 3, we can actively go in and get the tumor. So he gave us choices, and they were all choices that were like kind of, whoa, those are really big choices, considering I was sitting in my kitchen the day before.
Yeah, this is 24 hours later.
It's 24 hours later. But it also gave us direction and also gave us the thought that he's done this before, he's thought it through. The obvious choice was to have the surgery to eradicate this from his brain, to loosen it up. But, those are hard things to do. And a lot of cases with this is really having the caregiver be able to stand side by side with the patient. And the patient is, freaked out. They're concerned about what's going on. But the caregiver should be the person that will be able to field all of that information, be the record keeper, to be able to hold on to that type of stuff and think it through, and then be able to help them with making decisions as they go forward.
So on that note, not everybody is fortunate to have a caregiver per se. We do have a lot of people that come in that are alone and by themselves and maybe don't have that support system. And so for those people, I would say, do what you can. Reach out to friends. It's okay. They're your friends. Ask them for help. They want to know what to do. There's resources, as I mentioned, there's resources available in the community that can be, American Cancer Society is a great resource for providing help, whether it's rides or just counseling or mentoring. So if people are not fortunate to have that caregiver, or if they just don't have that caregiver right by their side, there's lots of people out there to help them.
Yeah, because it's very overwhelming. I mean, and you might, if you have a choice about a caregiver, maybe find the least emotional one in the group that might be able to just take everybody's
you take what you can get sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But not everybody's got a dad like Chuck that can jump on a plane and be next to you in San Francisco the next day.
Yeah.
Right.
Chuck, when your son was diagnosed with cancer, was that kind of your first experience with a family member with cancer or as a caregiver?
As a caregiver, yeah. There had been other family members. My mom and dad both passed from cancer. But as a caregiver, Brand new experience.
Yeah.
Brand new experience. Didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to expect through the whole process. As parents, Lori and I really wanted to be there, hold his hand, take him, and we were able to get him home.
So how did you go from 2015 flying out to San Francisco, never been a cancer caregiver, to being the head of Siteman Cancer Center's PFAC group? What inspired you to get involved, to become educated enough? I mean, having gone through it with your son, and I know yourself, when did it kind of click? What was the inspiration for that?
I think it really clicked when my son was in the radiation oncology suite down in the basement of Siteman. And all the number of times that he went there for treatment, it was sitting in the chairs down there, waiting for his treatment, and seeing all the various people that were coming into it. And I like to talk to people. I like to hear people's stories. So I sat there and I would see somebody and say, where are you from? And they say, well, I'm from Carbondale. And I get in my car every day and come up here for treatment. So it's 2 hours plus one way and then back home to do that type of stuff. And then you start to see, the pain of being able to do that. You also see stories along the way. And when my son was having difficulty with his legs, he was going to be operated on the next day, and he was in a two-person room up there. And the other person that was in the room was a young man, about my son's age, and I overheard some of the conversations that he was having with his wife. And he was having difficulty trying to navigate the disability process of it. Mm-hmm. He was out of work. His employer had a disability plan. He couldn't get money. And it was so frustrating to hear that, because I worked in that industry and knew that well, why he wasn't being taken care of and doing that. So as a part of this, it was really an idea of, how do I give back, and how do I do it effectively and to be able to help people along the way? And it was one of those things that I thought about. And then how I got involved with PFAC is I was down at South County. My doctor was down there for a visit down there, and there was a sign. And the sign said Patient Family Advisory Council, and I thought, well, give it a shot. Mm-hmm. So I filled out an application, and I got a phone call, and things led to things. And like I said, I like to talk to people. I like to hear things. And especially with this as an opportunity to be behind the scenes at Siteman, to see how things work and to see how big the organization is, and to be able to hopefully help in terms of channeling some of those things to be more proactive towards patients and their families as they go through the process. So
what was the difference that you felt when you got the diagnosis yourself and then having to make those decisions versus, parent coming in and being like, I know what to do. I'm going to handle this. We're going to help you did you feel a difference in actually being the patient and then knowing what to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I still, when the doctor called me, my wife was in the other room, and I said, Lori, you need to get in here and listen to this. And he was saying that the results weren't what they were looking for. And when we both hung up with the doctor, we looked at each other and said, okay, let's go do this. And we weren't mad. We weren't upset. We weren't panicky or anything like that. We had friends down there, and we knew what the process was going to be. But, doing that, there still was an awful lot of angst. Going down to Siteman and to the Center for Advanced Medicine is a scary event for anybody. And going down there for myself was like, this is a totally different experience. I'm going down to this place. They're asking me an awful lot of questions. And it was really kind of gauging how well this is going to work for me and the process of what was going to go on and meeting the right people. Because you get passed around. In my case, I went from a urologist down to a radiation oncology doctor, down to a prostate person. And, we talked earlier about not running into and trying to get surgery done quickly. I found out about a thing called tumor board. And tumor board is the coolest thing ever. It kind of reminds me of Animal House when they flash your picture up on the screen like that.
What do we think about this guy?
And tumor board, explain what that is for those that don't know.
Tumor board is probably one of the smartest things that's out there. And what they do is they will take a patient and they'll have all the vitals and all the things that are going on, and they'll talk out loud about it. And there'll be physicians, there'll be surgeons, there'll be radiation people, there'll be all sorts of people that are in the room doing that. And
Gossiping about your tumor. I'm kidding. No.
But they'll literally sit in this room and go case by case by case. And they did that with my son, too. And my son was a frequent flyer on tumor board. And, it was...
They're collaborating.
They're collaborating. So it's not one person that's doing it. It's multiple people that are looking at it. And, once I heard about that, it was like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. They're not running into it. Like in the case of my prostate stuff, I didn't start treatment for almost 4 months. And it's like, come on, guys, let's pick up the pace here.
Right.
And they're like, you know what? We're putting you in front of tumor board. We're not running into this. We're walking into this. We're going to make good, sound decisions, and we're going to do the right thing.
And that had to have been hard, though, the anxiety that it gave you.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I'm sure there's people that are listening that, have gone through that and been like, it took, just because it took 3 months to get something going doesn't mean it's because you're under bad care. It means there's thought and process that goes into weighing the checks and balances of certain different types of treatments, correct? And that's what was happening.
Absolutely. And they had to talk me off a ledge a couple times. It's like, come on, guys, let's go. It's like, we got to take you to tumor board.
What are you guys hearing from patients and on the treatment side about the trust it takes for patients to hear a doctor, what the plan is, and believe in that plan? Because I would imagine that it's very difficult for patients to be like, well, there's tons of anxiety-ridden people walking in every day going, well, what if this doesn't work? What if this is the right plan? What kind of advice or just input are you getting from both sides of what people need to know about that, about trusting their plan?
It's asking questions. It's being proactive in your own care. It is, and that anxiety does not stop even after you are in remission. That anxiety continues your whole life, because what if it comes back? Or what if I get a different kind? Or, there's anxiety from the second, like you said, it shifts. Your whole life just shifts. And so it's okay to question the plan. It's okay. And for you, if it takes 3 months, it's because they're really trying to figure out the right course for you. And so the physicians have all of our patients' best interests at heart. So I would say that communicate with your physician, ask a lot of questions. And if you don't know what questions to ask, there's a lot of resources online. This is also a good time to see the psychology services at Siteman, just to kind of wade through and just kind of sort through the emotions and questions and all of that. It's never too early to start that.
When you're navigating the treatment plan and there's all different phases of it, right? So what are some things that you could give as advice to people about the middle of it, when changes happen, when things weren't what they originally were set out to be, when responses to certain treatments don't work? Navigating the treatment plan isn't just navigating at the beginning of it, it's navigating it in the middle, it's navigating it in the end, navigating the effects after the treatment. What kind of things have you learned since going through this with Chip and with yourself?
What I learned is everybody's different. Every process of doing this is different. Everybody starts out on the standard protocol treatments for whatever cancer that they have. And then as you go through, it changes. And with my son, it changed dramatically. He developed some tumors on his spine, which had migrated from his brain down there, and it didn't allow him to be able to walk. He was confined to a wheelchair. His legs didn't work. And it's like, okay, what can we do to get him ambulatory again? So we had to take him through, physical therapy. And we had a physical therapist come to the home and things like that. So it really was being able to react to the things that are going on. But it's also at the same time, staying focused on the end result of what you're wanting to do. And with anybody that's going through cancer treatment, their goal is, let's beat this. Let's get out of there. And in the case of my son, glioblastoma is not good. And we knew that time would be short, and we wanted to make sure that he was comfortable through it all. And having him stay with us was great, but it was also understanding the process of what was going on. And he endured a lot of radiation, a lot of chemotherapy, and they wanted to continue that almost up till his death, which we basically said, no, thank you. And I think he agreed to that. But it's understanding that there is going to be an end. And his case, we were blessed to be able to have great hospice care, and hospice came into our home and helped us with that and helped him with that. And because we made good friends, we're still very close friends with this hospice nurse.
Yes,
and we talk about the things that are going on in her life so I can get a better understanding of how she works with people at the end of their lives. But, to get back to your original question, it's really being able to take a deep breath and respond to the things as they come across the table at you, where a doctor says, you know what, the numbers don't look good. We found another tumor. We've got something bad that's going on. And having that caregiver or having that advocate for the patient be able to sit there and go, what's next? What do we do? How do we handle this? What do we need to do? And allow the physician to be able to help paint a new direction and a new path for the patient and also for the caregiver to be able to get through it.
You mentioned when it was time to move to hospice. Hospice is also a type of treatment for cancer. So how did you navigate going from we're going to beat this to we can't?
It was seamless. I remember that my son was up in the neuro ICU, and he had developed hydrocephalus, which is water in the brain, and they were trying to get that to drain. And his surgeon basically said, let's get him home. And at that point in time, hospice was declared, and it was not funny, but ironic, but the day that we decided that we were going to get him home, they were, getting ready to transport him. I'm in my car, my phone goes off, and it's the hospice nurse. And she goes, hi, I'm Alice. I'll meet you at your house. When are you going to get there? And I pull in the driveway. She was right there, and she started to triage what she needed to do. And she came in, and she was incredibly professional, incredibly caring, and said, okay, here's where we're going to go with this. We need to get equipment in your house. We need to get a place to be able to get him in. You need to get a ramp to get him in the house. You need to do all these other types of things. And what they did is she provided the leadership for Lori and myself to be able to get through this with our son.
Yeah.
And our son was, a great guy, and he just very happy to see people and do stuff. And he was a willing participant. But in some cases, people aren't willing participants to have hospice come into their home and do those types of things. So it's really understanding the process and understanding the role of the patient and the caregiver and understanding why that hospice person is coming in there. The hospice process blew me away.
It's a beautiful, beautiful.
It's incredible.
Group of people that. And this is not an episode about hospice, but from I was so touched by the experience I witnessed with my grandfather. I became a volunteer because I loved it. I did it until I had young kids, but the love and care and hearts that go into people that treat people that it's a different type of treatment. It's to make them comfortable and make their end of life a beautiful thing. They're not only treating the patients, they're treating the family. It's one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had on a family side and as a volunteer.
Right. Yep.
And that is navigating a very hard truth when you get to that point. And I know Patrick had to do the same with his dad.
Yeah. That 370 days that my son, after he was diagnosed to the time he passed away, was an amazing journey. And I sit back and reflect on it. He passed away 8 years ago this past week. And think back of all the experiences that I had and all the people that I met and all the hard things that we had to address on that is one of the reasons why I'm involved in PFAC. It's like, you know what? I learned a lot. I saw a lot, and I'm willing to give back and share that information with other people and to help them along the way.
So with navigating care and treatment, we are talking about this with this. The important piece is palliative care and hospice care is just part of the treatment plan.
Yeah.
Hospice care does not mean imminent death.
No.
It is hospice and palliative care are wonderful options and should be looked into for patients going through treatment. It's just that extra level of support for our patients.
Yeah. At the end of the day, every patient that is diagnosed with cancer has a choice on the methods and the road they want to go down when it comes to treating or addressing their cancer.
From the beginning to
From
the
the
end.
beginning to the end. I think that's probably something important for you that you went through as well, to know that you had a choice because you had extenuating circumstances in your prostate cancer.
Absolutely. You take your time. You walk through it.
There's so
Don't
many
run
options.
into it. You walk into it. And tumor board helped out quite a bit. And the surgeon that had done the previous procedure that excluded me from having prostate surgery was a part of it. He said, no, you can't have surgery for this.
Right.
So they had to come up with Plan B. And the Plan B was radiation and also getting me a part of a study and a trial, which was great.
Looking back, Chuck, at your experience with your son and then yourself, what would be some of your, I don't know, top tier, maybe top 4 or 5 pieces of overall advice to help people that are just starting out on this journey and going, I have no idea how I'm going to get through this? Because you've faced the worst by losing your child.
Sure.
It's the worst thing anybody can imagine, right?
Absolutely.
And then you faced your own mortality a few years later when you found out that you had cancer.
Right.
So you really have seen both sides.
Yeah.
What would be some things that you could say to someone to help them just take a deep breath?
I think the first thing that I would say, it's not a race, but a marathon. Take a deep breath. Gather your team around you. As a patient, get a caregiver that you can work with, or a couple caregivers, people that you can trust, that you can have help you along the way, whether it be with, going to doctor's appointments or working with insurance companies or any of the other peripheral things that are going on. Stay away from the internet. Don't go out there and try to self-diagnose and try to figure out what's going on. And realize that you as a patient have the absolute right to ask as many questions as you can ask. And there's never any dumb question. And if you ever walk out of a physician's appointment and still think that there should be questions to ask those questions before you leave.
Or MyChart them or call.
Absolutely. Learn as much as you can from the physicians and the nurses by asking questions. And the questions are, who are you? What do you do? How long have you been doing this? That's to the doctors. That's a fair question to ask. To the nurses, how can you help me? How do I get in contact with you? Can I email you information? Can you email me stuff along the way? If I have issues, how do I go about doing it? And MyChart comes into play with that. And ask them open-ended questions. What else do I need to know? And that's a great question to ask no matter when you go to an appointment or whatever. What else do I need to know?
And also to find out who actually is also part of the care team, because it's not just the physician and the nurses. It's the social workers. It's the psychologists. It's the dietitians. It's everybody that works in that facility is that person's care team.
Yeah.
And so they have hundreds of people that are on their care team.
Right.
And that's what's amazing, is that everybody's rooting for every single patient there and is behind them.
Chuck, when you learned that Chip's diagnosis, I know you didn't go through a rabbit hole and go on the internet, but you knew glioblastoma was not a easy thing to get through. What would you say to someone listening that has heard that news for themselves or someone they love, and they're thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to love them through it or how I'm going to get through it. Because you did, but I'm sure you felt those emotions.
Yeah. My emotions and my wife's emotions were day by day. And it was really two sets of emotions. One, the emotions of my son, because he would suffer and not have good days, and our job was to prop him up and to tell him things are going to be okay. And it's a day-by-day process, and he knew that it was not good. And from our perspective as caregivers, we realized that we needed to take care of ourselves too. So a lot of it was, if he was sleeping, we would take a nap too. We would, do that. We would also make sure that we ate properly. When he was in the hospital, I gained 20 pounds because I loved the chicken and collard greens down in the cafeteria.
It is good.
And my wife lost about 30 pounds because she worried and didn't eat all that stuff. Yeah. So a lot of it is taking care of yourself and not, going to extremes.
Yeah.
And just live through it. Just live through it.
I always think of this always, everyone says it, but it is true. You really don't know what you can do until you have to go through it. Right. You really don't think you can do things until you do them, and then you realize, I just went through that, or I just did that. And it seems insurmountable, but you're sitting here today, 8 years later, and you've been through it, right, and you're advocating for other people. Which, number one, is a beautiful way to honor your son, but also shows that the impact of what you went through touched you in a very deep way.
Oh, it did. It did. And it's because of the people that were involved. I can still see the look on nurses' faces. I can still see the looks on doctors' faces. I can still see the look on my face as things went through. And a lot of it was we had faith that he was in the right place, that he was getting the right treatment. And his experience was one that we knew was not going to end well. We knew it from the very beginning because the oncologist out at UCSF painted the picture of what it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is what's going to go on. And our goal was really to love on him for a year or so that he was with us, and to be able to get him through that. And it was important. And again, it's really surrounding yourself with people that are positive. One of the things that we did learn is we didn't really talk to people a lot about what was going on. Yeah. We have a very close friend whose adult son was going through leukemia, and people would come to him and say, "Hey, how's he doing?" And his advice to me was, you don't need to share anything with anybody, because a lot of this turns into gossip, and gossip is not good because it goes out and gets changed 16 times when it happens like that. So it's keeping yourself surrounded with your team of people that will help you through the process and help the patient through the process and doing like that. And the circle in our case didn't need to be large, but it had to be impactful with the people that were in place, people that could add something instead of extracting something to share with other people about the stuff that was happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's true. You do have a choice on who you want to include in your journey.
Yeah.
So that circle that Chuck is talking about, Chuck, do you want to talk to them about or share the party that this happened to celebrate your son's life? What happens on an annual basis?
My son, as I said earlier, my son was involved in the tech industry, and when he graduated from Mizzou, he wanted to be a writer for the New Yorker. And we were like, he graduated from J school out there. So,
me too.
And it was like, okay, great. So it was kind of like a prison release. We went and bought him a suit, got him an airplane ticket, a one-way airplane ticket, and said, giddy up and go. And he put him on the plane, and he ended up sleeping on people's couches for a while. He tried to get in the journalism business out there, and it didn't work. But as a kid, he was a Mac kid. Mm-hmm. He was the first kid on the block that had a Macintosh. Mm-hmm. And he learned everything about Macintosh to the point where one day, and we found this out after he passed away, that he taken apart his computer one day. And that's something that you don't do.
Especially with a Mac.
With a Mac. And what happened is he got a little shock. And he knocked him down for a while.
Oh, wow.
And we found out about that. So what happened was he knew an awful lot about that. And it's like, he was like, I don't know what to do, Dad. What do we do? And we said, there's this big, beautiful Mac store on Fifth Avenue. Why don't you go down and see if you could get a job down there? So their interview process was strange. It was done in a ballroom, and he was there with 75 of his closest friends going through an open interview. And the guy said, who has questions? And my son raised his hand and asked 2 or 3 questions. And at the end of that, they came up and said, why don't you come join us?
Because his questions were so smart.
Yeah, you're smart. So he was hired by Apple and worked in the store for a while, and that's where he started to meet his friends in the tech industry. And the kids were utterly brilliant. So they lived in New York for a while. Then Chip went and worked at Mizzou as the Mac person for the University of Missouri, and then he ended up going out to San Francisco and working for various firms out there. But when Chip was sick, they would come in, and because people in the tech industry, they're not tied to a desk.
No.
And they can jump in an airplane, and they're all doing really well at an early age, so they could say, okay, I'm going to take 3 or 4 days and go out and hang out with Chip. Mm-hmm. And they came in, and they wheeled him around town and took him to dinners and out to bars and all sorts of stuff to help him along the way. But after he passed, they continued to be a part of our life. And this last year, they came in and they spent a week with us at my house. It was fun to see him, but it was fun to see him leave too.
Yeah, a week.
3 days is usually the rule, right?
But
great.
We've traveled the country with them. We've been to the UP with them. We shared a house and did the experience up there. We've been to North Muskegon, Michigan, and spent time on sailboats and doing things like that. We've been out to San Francisco with them and experienced their lives and what's going on with that. So they're really basically an extended portion of our family.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And it's really kind of cool to see these guys as they grow and prosper. And, the thing is that they haven't forgot my son.
No.
And they, love my son, and he loved them back, and it was a very close-knit group of people.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a legacy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really cool. It's really cool. And it's
That's
something
incredible.
that's like, why are they hanging out with 65, 67, 69-year-old people?
Because you probably are a piece of him that they get to see, and they for you,
Absolutely. And we welcome them into it, and we love the stories that they share because when they all lived in New York, they didn't live on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
They had lived in places that you can only describe.
Yeah, you're getting dollar dumplings and dollar slices.
Oh man, those guys were the kings of that. They found places where if you buy a beer, you get pizza. So they were very happy about that stuff, and they all lived together. It was kind of communal, but you could see how these guys all progressed and changed.
Yeah.
And they all started in New York looking for a dream, and the dreams all evolved into the tech industry, and they all ended up saying, okay, let's migrate west where all the tech activity is. So
That is
that's what they
beautiful.
did. It's kind of cool.
That's incredibly cool. As we close out, I definitely want to congratulate you guys on the successes that you're having. But as on behalf of a patient and a family, that has benefited from Siteman's care, I want to thank you for all that you guys do behind the scenes that people don't know about. Yeah. I think a lot of what you guys do, people are going to benefit from and not even know that it's something that was thought of by a PFAC, meeting and put into place by Siteman for their benefit.
Well, I would just say from a parent's perspective, I have 2 kids, and I think it's a beautiful way to keep Chip's memory alive is to impact patients now and future patients and their experience. And I can tell that you have no regrets on the way in which you handled and navigated his treatment plan. And
Thank you.
incredibly grateful that you had a successful treatment plan yourself.
Thanks.
And thank you both for being here today.
Our pleasure.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to This is Cancer.
Brought to you by Siteman Cancer Center at Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis.
National leaders in cancer.
For more information on Siteman Cancer Center, go to siteman.wustl.edu and be sure to leave us a review and like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.